Hello, this lesson is going to introduce you and help you to understand exactly what plagiarism is so that you don't get yourself into a precarious situation anytime you're taking a course, but especially during your time in the paramedic program. We do this just because we've found that often people don't understand what plagiarism is. And that's unfortunate because plagiarism can have dire consequences, including people losing their career over plagiarism, which we can look at many examples throughout popular history of that occurring. And so our purpose is to be proactive in this and really for you to help you understand exactly what it is and how to make sure that even in you don't even do something accidentally that is plagiarism. So that's the purpose of what this is as you dive into the paramedic program, and especially the first couple modules where you have some written assignments, it's important for you to understand this. And so that's why we're taking the time to do this program with you. Throughout this lecture, it will stop you at different points. You'll need to answer questions in order to move through the lecture. And you do need to watch the entirety of the lecture. So let's look at the definition of plagiarism. If you go out onto the internet, you're going to find probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different definitions. We're going to use the definition of plagiarism that we have established in our own policy here at the Howard County Department of Fire and Rescue Services. So understand that the word plagiarism comes from the Latin plagiaris, and it actually means kidnapper, which is a perfect word when you really think about what plagiarism is, okay? Because you're taking someone else's ideas or words, etc., and purporting it as your own. So you're kind of stealing it like a kidnapper would steal. So, what is plagiarism? As we define it in our policy, it's the appropriation of another person's ideas, processes, results, or words without giving appropriate credit. And that is how we will define plagiarism throughout this course. So let's take that definition apart here. And we're going to look at a couple of different parts of the definition, which you can see there at the top of your screen. So appropriation. What is appropriation? Well, that means, using or taking something that's not yours, okay? Whether it's been generated by an artificial intelligence or whether it was created by another human being. If it's not created by you, it's not yours. So at the heart of what plagiarism is, it is literally stealing another person or someone that is not you or thing, words or ideas. It's academically dishonest because we expect you as students, and we also expect the instructors here to do their own work. Any of us can go online and find information on any topic, really. We can log into a chat, like a chat GPT or a Google Gemini, any of those things, and get an answer. But when we assign you something to do, there's a reason behind that. We will never, ever in the paramedic program assign you something just to be busy work. If we're assigning you something, it's meant to help you further enhance your knowledge around a topic. And so I want to know what you know and what you have learned in research and not someone else. The next part of the definition is ideas, processes, results, or words. And that really refers to another person's intellectual property. A plagiarizer uses or takes another person's intellectual property, whether it's something they've written, an image they've generated, etc. Plagiarism means taking or using any of the following intellectual property without permission or giving credit. So, first, words, and this is probably the most common way. So, copying more than 4 to 6 consecutive words, rearranging phrases, or even paraphrasing extensively, that's all considered plagiarism. We're going to get more into paraphrasing later in this PowerPoint, but that's one of the things that often people think, oh, I'm not plagiarizing because I just took what they said and just rewrote it, changed some words around, etc. So it's not plagiarism. That's incorrect. And so we'll talk more about that here shortly. Ideas is the other piece. Using original information learned from conference presentations that you've gone to, reviews that you've read, other information that others have created, and then purporting it as your own. Other things that are considered plagiarism is processes. So that would be like adopting or using research methods described by another investigator, especially when the research method is not common knowledge. Okay, basically, that's specific to research, which we will look at a lot of different research in the program, but other processes that people have created on their own. Okay, so anything, if they've thought of how to do something a specific way that's a unique idea, etc. You can't steal that and use that. Results, okay, using or reporting data, figures, or tables that represent another person's research. And then giving appropriate credit, the last part of the definition. So anytime that we are using someone else's work, we need to make sure that we're providing the name of the author, the artist, research scholar, etc., whoever it is that is the author of that. We need to also make sure that we're providing the publication data so that another person, maybe me as your instructor or someone else, can go and find that original source and look at that information. That's really helpful when we are reading things, especially research abstracts, because the research is not going to spend, the research article that we're reading is not going to spend, paragraphs upon paragraphs talking about someone else's previous research. They might just include a quick sentence, and I might be like, I want to know more about that. So I can quickly go to the citation, see where they got that information from, and then go to that article myself. So that's very helpful when researching information. And then we always want to make sure that we're using quotation symbols to indicate direct quotes. So plagiarism and cheating are an absolute epidemic, as I'm sure you're probably well aware. And I want to look at a couple examples here. The Huffington Post recently had an article where it found that 75% of college students admitted to cheating. 1 out of 3 high school students admitted that they used the internet to plagiarize an assignment. And 40% of college students at this specific university at Rutgers admitted to cheating on written assignments. These are all pieces, articles, and research that are several years old, and I can only imagine that this number has gotten higher with the advent of AI. So what does the research actually show us about individuals who plagiarize or cheat? An article from the American Psychological Association that I found talks about some research even suggests that academic cheating may be associated with dishonesty later in life. A 2007 survey of 154 college students at Southern Illinois University found that students who plagiarize in college reported that they viewed themselves as more likely to break the rules in the workplace, cheat on spouses, and engage in illegal activity. A 2009 survey found even further correlation of that. People who cheat on exams in high school are 3 times more likely to lie to a customer or inflate an insurance claim compared to those who never cheated. High school cheaters are twice as likely to lie or to deceive their boss, and 1.5 times more likely to lie or to a significant other or cheat on their taxes. So I can tell you from the almost 20 years that I've spent as an educator, that generally when I discover a student who has plagiarized something, number one, the first thing is most of the time it actually is intentional. And number two, it definitely corresponds to an overall character and ethical issue that I typically see with them. And so it gives me grave concerns anytime I see a student who does this, because it makes me question their overall ethics and their overall honesty. So why does it matter? Well, when you plagiarize, there are academic consequences, and we'll get more into our policy here, but we're very clear and strict on this. When you plagiarize, you signal that you're not a trustworthy student, and so everything becomes suspect. And I'll be very honest with you that if you ever plagiarize in the paramedic program or anything associated here with your work, you're going to be under a microscope. Not only will you have lost my trust, but you will likely lose the trust of most of the other individuals, if not all, that are involved in the paramedic education program. It also makes us question the other work outside of the paramedic program that you've done with the department. When you plagiarize, you're literally just hurting yourself. And I know you hear that and you kind of just blow that off, but you are the one that's robbing yourself of knowledge. Okay? Um, you, no one decided that you must take the paramedic program. Okay, you work for a department that does not require you earn your paramedic, that it is totally optional, and you all have decided to take the giant step and the tremendous amount of work to become a paramedic. And so behind that, okay, yes, I understand that there are definitely extrinsic factors in that. Okay, there's a pay raise for those of you that are not volunteers. There's a pay raise associated with this. For those of you volunteers, maybe it's okay the aspect of having a better chance getting a job. So certainly I understand that. Okay, but intrinsically, I would hope that everyone that has signed up for this program also wants to better their knowledge. Okay, almost all of you in your interviews or in your entrance paperwork, I read about you were always interested in what the paramedics were doing, especially on those critical patients. But you as an EMT just did not have that knowledge, and so you wanted to gain that knowledge, and so you really need to think about that before doing the easy thing of just plagiarizing, okay? This is the only time that you're going to get this foundational knowledge. You're not going to go through a paramedic program again after this. And so it's your one chance of getting that knowledge. And so you want to make sure that you are the one who's actually getting it and you're not just taking someone else's work. So what if an architect cheated his way through his math class? Do you think your home would be safe? Probably not. What if the lawyer that you paid for the lawyer that you've hired paid for a copy of the bar exam to study with? Will the contract that she wrote for you stand up in court? You paid a lot of money for that lawyer. The accountant who does your taxes hired someone to write his papers and paid a stand-in to take his major tests. Does he know enough to complete your tax forms properly? Hope you don't get audited. And finally, do you really want a paramedic caring for your friends or family who cheated on their exams? I surely would hope not. So let's look at the different types of plagiarism. There's really 10 different types of plagiarism that we're going to look at here, and we'll take a look at these individually. The first is cloning, okay, where basically you are submitting another person's work word for word as your own. And as we go through these different types, you will see where I've given you the source text, the same one that we'll use throughout, okay, and then what the student work did. And you can see here, this person literally copied and pasted the entire thing word for word, okay? You might laugh if you see this, but I'll tell you that, like I said, over the last 20 years as an educator, I have definitely seen this before. So examine the example and point out, or really look there how the writer itself has just literally cloned the source text. Okay, no attempt has been made to add quotation marks or references to the original source. They are literally flat out just using what the source text said. Okay, it's the easiest form of plagiarism to identify because it's literally a copy of the exact source. But unfortunately, I see this quite frequently from students. And you might say, well, this was something I saw when I was teaching high school. No, 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 no. I see this even frequently in high level firefighter and EMS classes. Like, for example, when I teach officer classes, I have seen this before. And when I teach instructor classes, which is even more concerning. Well, actually, both are concerning to me. So this is not something that students just do, by accident, okay, or just kids do. The second is Control C, okay. What you may know is just like copy, okay, the copy paste idea. So this is where you contain significant proportions of the text from a single source without any alterations. It's similar to cloning in many ways, but instead of copying large chunks of the text word for word, the writer adds or changes a few small words here or there. Overall, the majority of the text still comes from the source, though, and you can see that here. Okay, so this is for someone that's trying to be a little less lazy. Okay, and they're trying to be like, oh well, it's not cheating or copying or plagiarizing if I just insert a word here or there or change a word. Okay, again, there's no attempt to add quotation marks or references, etc. The next is called find and replace. And this is when we change keywords and phrases but retain the essential content from the source. Again, this is very similar to Control C or Control Copy, but instead of focusing on changing beginning words in each sentence, the writer tries to change more significant keywords and phrases within the text in an attempt to make it appear that the content's different, when in fact it's still large chunks from the original source. Again, no attempt has been made to use quotation marks or reference the original source. Remix is our next one. And this is when they paraphrase from multiple sources and then try to put it together, kind of like a little puzzle piece. With this one, this is a writer who's trying to get a little more fancy, okay? Because they're trying to put a little more effort into concealing their plagiarism, which is just like if you would spend more time, you spend more time trying to conceal your plagiarism than you would if you just actually wrote it. So rather than taking large chunks from one source, like we saw in the last three examples, the writer takes information from multiple sources, paraphrasing that information and fitting it together to make it appear as if it all works seamlessly. Again, just like all the other examples that we've looked at, there's been no attempt to use quotations or credit the source authors. Recycle is the next form. So in this piece, the writer reuses their own work on a later assignment. Okay, this is also often termed self-plagiarism. It's the recycling of information, particularly without a citation for the previous work. It's often a difficult concept for students to understand. Okay, even if it's your previous work, you still must cite it. I will tell you that in the Turnitin software that we utilize on assignments within our LMS, within Canvas, which MIFRE uses, they also use Turnitin. The tracer actually looks at all previous assignments that you have ever turned in any class to see if they are the same. So students often think that the software only looks at just what's out there on the web, etc. It actually looks at the database of all work that has ever been turned in within the Bureau, or in the case of MIFRE, all work that's ever been turned in within the history of the University of Maryland. So don't try to pull a fast one. Okay, it will find previous work. And you're fine to use things that you have previously done. You just need to appropriately cite it. Hybrid is the next form. Okay, so this is a combination of perfectly cited sources, but you then have copied passages without a citation. So this is really one where some things have been effectively cited material, but then there's other pieces where that's not the case. It's possible sometimes with this one that it could be plagiarism that's unintentional and just simply cited incorrectly or improperly. But intentionally citing or slipping uncited material into a work of text is also a possibility. So always just go back and double check your assignment before turning it in to make sure that you haven't slipped in something or not cited something appropriately. The next is called a mashup. So it mixes, like it says, a mashup would can kind of take you to believe, material from multiple sources. Okay, and so it could be seen in conjunction with other types of plagiarism, since some reference singular sources and this one reference multiple sources, that you can see here. It's just making sure that, like we have seen here, you have some where no credit has been given. So just again, this is another one where if the student had just reread at the end and made sure that everything was appropriate, then they would be good to go. They probably would have caught it. Okay, a 404 error. Okay, this is when people include citations that are actually non-existent or they're inaccurate. So you know how you get the 404 error when you go to a website that doesn't actually exist? Sometimes that's just caused by, the websites have changed, etc. But literally, as I've seen before, some people go to the effort to actually create a fake citation. Okay, and so you want to make sure that your citations are actually accurate. And I will look at those citations when I'm looking at your work. So like I said, it can be intentional, it can be unintentional. Either way, we'll make sure to investigate it. The ninth type is an aggregator. Okay. So with this one, the writer includes proper and effective citations for all references to source material. However, the majority of the work is made up of the source material and very little original work by the writer. So some people have the idea, well, I can use all these other materials from, X, Y, and Z source, as long as I use quotation marks or cite them all, okay, and then kind of mash them up all together. No, that is not the case, okay. Like I said earlier, I can go on the internet just as easy as you and look these things up, okay. Certainly, we want you to include outside resources in your work. However, okay, we want to hear what your thoughts are. So we shouldn't be able to just look at the paper and it's just a hodgepodge or a mashup of other research. It should be a combination of other research as well as your own thoughts around those things. And the 10th and final is what we call the retweet. Okay. So it includes a proper citation, but it relies too closely on the text's original word or structure. So the writer includes a proper citation here, okay, but the material itself is basically darn near close to the original wording, okay, and it is not included in quotation marks to denote that that is a word for word thing. So basically, the writer attempted to paraphrase or summarize, but the end result is too close to the original material. Again, things have to be in your own words, and when you are copying something to add, and we'll talk about when that's appropriate to add to your paper from someone else's, you need to make sure you're using quotation marks. So let's look at some strategies to actually avoid plagiarism because it can be unintentional. But the idea is we should not see unintentional plagiarism for you after going through this presentation because we're teaching you how to avoid that. So, one thing that I often hear from students is research is just too hard or it's too time consuming. Okay? Well, it's not hard, but it does take time. I don't have any compassion for you if you've waited to the last minute to do an assignment and now you're trying to figure out what to do because it's going to take a lot of time. Okay, that's on you. Okay, you need to make sure that you're taking the appropriate time to actually prepare and do the assignment. That's why we give you, usually with a lot of assignments, at least a week written assignments to do them. So there are really 5 steps that you can use to avoid plagiarism. We're going to talk about each of those: note taking, quoting, paraphrasing, summarizing, and citing. So let's talk about note taking. So sloppy note taking is going to increase the risk that you will unintentionally plagiarize. Okay, unless you have taken notes clearly, it's going to be hard to tell whether you copied specific passages exactly, paraphrased them, or wrote them yourselves. So it's really a challenge when you're using electronic source material, as those can be easily copied and pasted into your own documents. When I was doing my doctorate, I would often have a Word document up where I would write my notes, okay, about an article that I was reading. And sometimes I would actually, if there were specific parts of it that I thought that I would use in my dissertation later, like quotations, I would copy and paste them over into that document. But I always made sure that I went ahead and put those in quotation. I actually always italicized them too to try to give it another pop to my eyes to know that, okay, that's not my notes, that's a specific quote. And then on the paper itself, I would include the citation for whatever article that I was looking at. So make sure that, like I was just saying, you identify the words that you copy directly. Always make sure you put quotations around them. It's also helpful for you to go ahead and jot down the page number and the author or title. Now, obviously, you probably, at least for this program, most of your research will not be from a book unless it's from your textbook. It will be doing things that you're doing online. So in that case, it's important to make sure that you jot down the title of the article, the author of the article or authors, and then the web address of the article. Always keep a working reference list, and we're going to talk more about that with your citations. Okay, quoting is the next piece. So quotations are exact words from the author that are copied directly from the source word for word. Okay, quoting is okay, as long as we're not over quoting and using just quotation after one another for our work. Okay, quotation should be used sparingly and to enhance what you're trying to explain. So you really want to add the power of an author's words to support your argument, okay? Especially if that author is really considered a big thinker or scholar in that specific field. If you want to disagree with an author's argument, okay, you might want to use a quotation then from the author to then go and put your own words after it, refuting that. If you want to highlight a particularly eloquent or powerful phrase in the passage, sometimes there are just things that you can't put into any better words and are just so well said that you want to include that in your research. Completely fine, okay? Just make sure that you quote it and cite it. Another one is if you're comparing and contrasting, your specific points of view. So, in general, you want to use quotations sparingly, okay? And if you use them, they have to be exact word for word as they appear in the original document. Every quotation must be cited, even if you use a little short phrase or a single word, like pretzel logic or clandestine coup, whatever. Okay, those are things that no matter how small it is, you have to cite it. So let's talk about paraphrasing because this is where people often get themselves into trouble. So this means rephrasing an author's words, putting his or her thoughts in your own words. When paraphrasing, you rework the source's ideas, words, phrases, and sentence structures with your own. Like quotations, paraphrase material must be followed with in-text documentation and cited in your references page. So you can paraphrase when you plan to use information on your note cards and wish to avoid plagiarizing. When you want to avoid overusing quotations, because you've already used a bunch, so you don't want to use more. So we can paraphrase what an author has said. When you want to use your own voice to present information. So let's look at some examples here, okay? So here's the source first. So I'll just give you a second just to read that example source. So now let's look at an inadequate paraphrase there, okay? So you can see here in this paraphrase, it's very similar to the source itself. Okay, there are no quotations in some places where there should be quotations, but basically it is the same thing. So that paraphrase is guilty of plagiarism, okay, even though the material is cited correctly. The writer has used too many word for word phrases from the source. Also, the order of those ideas is unchanged from the source. They literally rewrote it in the same order. So here's a correct paraphrase of that. So we're going to take a look at this short video here that really does a great job of introducing how to best paraphrase.
You're here. Probably know a thing or two about paraphrasing, but still struggle to master the art of it. Fear not. I'll explain how to paraphrase in 5 easy steps and give you a few tips along the way. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jessica from Scribber, and we're here to help you achieve your academic goals. And in this video, we'll be talking about paraphrasing. So, what is paraphrasing? A paraphrase is a rewriting of a specific passage from someone else. It's done in your own words, without changing the original meaning and also not removing any information. Okay, we know the meaning, so let's get started. Here are 5 easy steps to paraphrasing. Step 1. Read the passage several times to fully understand the meaning. Step 2. Note down the key concepts. Step 3. Write your version of the text without looking at the original. Step 4. Compare your paraphrased text with the original one, and if you find phrases too similar, make changes. Step 5. Cite the source of the text like the example here. You can also cite easily with the Scribber citation generator. Remember, you don't need the quotation marks to paraphrase. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You know the steps, but it's still quite difficult to actually produce a piece of text that's different from the original. Don't you worry, I have 4 tips to help make everything easier for you. Whenever you see this little pause button, it's there to remind you if you ever need more time to read through the examples, you can pause and take your time. Tip number 1. Start your first sentence at a different point from the original source. Tip number 2, use synonyms. Make use of the thesaurus if you can't think of any synonyms. Tip number 3, change the sentence structure. Try using passive voice if the original text used active, and vice versa. Final tip, break long sentences into smaller sentences, or combine sentences into a longer one. In this example, you can see we've applied the 4 tips. First, we introduce the context followed by the last part of the original sentence, which is the expectations of creators, regulators, and users. We also use quite a few synonyms, such as exposed a critical turning point, made it apparent, outpaces, rapidly eclipsed, power, immense influence. Third, we change from active to passive voice. Technology outpaces what users, regulators, or even its creators expected. The expectations of creators, regulators, and users have been rapidly eclipsed by technology. And finally, the original was one long sentence. We broke it into 2 smaller sentences. Now that you know the tips for paraphrasing, make sure you don't confuse it with quoting, which is when you copy a source word by word. Naturally, you should end up paraphrasing most of the information you found instead of quoting if you have done your research thoroughly, which is ultimately a better solution since it shows that you have digested your text, your paper will have a much better flow, plus your voice will remain dominant throughout the paper. With that being said, only use quotes when you are giving a definition, presenting an author's position, or when you want to support your argument. Make sure to check out this video on how to quote if you're interested. And that's it for today's video. If you've learned something, give this video a like, and if you have a question, ask away.
So I hope that was a little bit helpful for you in understanding how to paraphrase, because that is often where students get themselves into the most trouble, as I have seen over the years. Okay, summarizing is the next thing that I want to talk about. And so summarizing involves putting one or several writers' main ideas into your own words, including only the main points. So summaries are significantly shorter than the original and take a broad overview of the source materials. Okay. Even so, we still need to attribute the original sources. So when do you summarize? When you want to establish background or offer an overview of a topic. When you want to describe knowledge from several sources about a topic. And when you want to determine the main ideas from a single source. So, as we have said multiple times already, it is very, very important that you are citing the sources that you are using. So anytime you incorporate to your writing ideas, words, key phrases, quotes, pictures, etc., that were not created by you, you have to give credit to the original author. So that is signaling to the reader where the words, the information, the ideas, etc., where they came from, and where also where the source begins and ends, like when we're using quotation marks. For this course, we're going to use APA citation style. And so to introduce you to that, I'm going to play for you another video here. Just understand that we're going to use the Scribber tool, which I'll talk about here in a second, to do this really easily. I know that you're not in a master's research program or a doctoral program, and so the idea here is I'm not going to be, really nitpicky in ensuring that you italics or capitalize certain things in the citation appropriately. Okay. However, we do want you to create citations, and the easiest way to do that is Scribber, which does almost 99% of the work for you. But let's real quick get an introduction to what APA citation is.
APA references provide detailed information about a source. They're listed on the reference page at the end of your paper and correspond to in-text citations in the body text. It's important to understand how an APA reference is built. This enables you to review both your own work and the accuracy of any tool you might be using. Hi, I'm Jessica from Scribber, here to help you achieve your academic goals. So how do you create your APA references? There are two ways, either manually or use a citation generator like the free one Scribble provides. Let's say I want to cite an article. Click on Journal, search the article by title, and cite source. Although the reference format differs depending on the type of source, for example, a book, web page, or video, they're built from the same four components. Author. Who is responsible for creating the work? Date. When was the work published? Title. What is the work called? Source. Where can the work be retrieved? Combine all of them and you'll have a reference like this. We'll now take a closer look at these four elements and show you some examples. The reference usually starts with the author's name. This can be an individual, multiple people, or an organization. In an APA reference, the author's name is inverted. Start with the last name, so Smith, followed by a comma and the initials, T, separated by a period and space. Treat infixes, such as span or de, as part of the last name. Don't include personal titles, such as PhD or doctor, but do include suffixes, like junior. If there are multiple authors, separate their names with commas. Before the last author's name, you should also insert an ampersand. So here I have Miller TC, comma, Brown MJ, comma, ampersand, Wilson GL. If an author is unknown, try inferring it from the context. For example, an About Us page on a website is usually written by the organization behind the website. So use the organization name in your reference. In our case, it's Wistia. If you really don't know who's responsible for creating the work, you can start the reference with the title instead. After the author, you include a date of publication in parentheses. It can take several forms. Only the publication year, year and month, year, month, and day, or a year range. In most cases, you only include the year of publication in the reference entry. Sources that are published more frequently, like newspapers, blogs, YouTube videos, etc., usually include the full date. If the publication date is unknown, write ND or no date in its place. After the date, include the title. Here is where you write the name of the work that you're citing. This can be the title of a whole book, which is a standalone work. So in our example, Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as if your life depended on it is the book title. When citing a standalone work, its title appears in the title component, in italics and sentence case. You might also want to cite an article from a journal or a chapter from a book, so a work that is part of a greater whole. In this case, you need to include two titles. The first is the article title, Influencer Marketing, How Message Value and Credibility Affect Consumer Trust of Branded Content on Social Media. And the journal title, Journal of Interactive Advertising. When citing a work that is part of a larger whole, the title of the work appears in the title component. Use sentence case capitalization with no styling. And the title of the larger whole appears in the source component in italics. If a work does not have a title, like this painting from Van Gogh, provide a description of it in square brackets in place of the title. Well, it is a portrait of a woman. After the title, you give details of the source, which tells your reader where the work can be retrieved. When citing a standalone work, like a book or web page, you include the name of the publisher, database, platform, or website, whichever is relevant to your source, and a DOI or URL. So in our case, it's Sage Publications. When citing a work that is part of a greater whole, For example, an article in a journal, you include information about this grade whole, like its title, which is Journal of Interactive Advertising, relevant edition, volume or issue information, so volume 17, issue 2, relevant contributors like editors, the page range, which is page 138 to 149, and the publisher, as well as the DOI or URL linking to the work. Okay, let's take a look at all the components together. In Scribner Citation Example Generator, you can get a clear overview of a reference format. So for a journal article, you first have the author component, followed by the publication year, then the title, and finally the source, including the title of a grade whole, page range, publisher, and the DOI. For a book, similarly include the author, date, title, and source, including the edition and publisher. For a web page, also include the author, date, and title. For the source, you should include the website name and the URL. Now it's time to try doing it yourself. When in doubt, you can always double check with our AP example articles linked down below or use our AP citation generator. After that, you should format the reference page yourself. Watch this video next to learn how to do so. AP.
So that gives you a really quick overview of an APA citation. Again, I would highly recommend that you use Scribner. It's just scribner.com to generate your citations. You literally, most, like I said, of yours are probably either going to be websites or journal articles. You literally can type it right in and it builds the citation, and then you just have, sometimes it asks you for a little bit more of additional information, etc. The other nice thing about this that I wanted to point out is that they have these tools here where you can actually upload your assignment into it to make sure that you have cited things appropriately, that there's not picking up on any plagiarism, etc. And so it will also check your citations, all of that. So it's a great tool to use that I would highly recommend you use. So let's take a look briefly at our academic dishonesty policy that we've established for the Bureau of Education and Training. The lead instructor will determine academic dishonesty with the input of the paramedic program staff, our executive committee, and the department if required. Okay. Understand that academic dishonesty in any form is absolutely 100% not tolerated. Consequences can range from a written counseling report, which will always happen, okay, to an immediate dismissal from the program with the ineligibility to enroll into future programs and having current certifications and employment status reviewed concerning required standards of ethical behavior. So understand that this is not just an academic issue, it can also be an employment issue that literally threatens whether or not you stay employed. So it is vitally important that you absolutely are never academically dishonest, which plagiarism is one form of. Here are some examples. It is not an exhaustive list, okay, but just some of the most common. So any kind of cheating, okay. Conversing during any kind of classroom testing or quiz taking is automatically considered cheating. The use of notes for closed note assignments, okay? They include but are not limited to papers, books, laptops, cell phones, calculators, electronic devices, crib notes, okay? Information written on any media, etc. Plagiarism or passing off someone's work as your own. Having another person do an assignment for you. Failure to completely attend clinical activities, but yet you put down that you were there for the entire time. Falsification or forgery of academic documents, okay? Whether it is an application, the evaluations that your clinical preceptors do, your payroll pieces in telestaff, etc. And then breach of confidentiality. Because it's difficult to determine the content of student-to-student conversation, this is vitally important for you to understand. Any Any conversation during a test or quiz session will be interpreted as a violation of academic honesty policy. The burden does not lie with the instructional staff, okay, in determining that the content of the conversation was inappropriate. So if you speak to another student during a test or quiz, it is automatically considered a violation of the academic dishonesty policy. Any type of electronic recording or data transmission device, like a cell phone, okay, that has shown that it can capture and transmit academically sensitive information, such as test and quiz content, okay. As a result, during tests, quizzes, or other student evaluations, any cell phone or electronic recording or data transmission device, okay, laptops, iPads, etc., or viewing in any manner will violate the academic dishonesty policy. During those times, all cell phones and electronic data recording devices have to be secured outside the building and not handled until after testing. Again, the burden does not lie with the instructional staff in determining the manner of the cell phone or electronic device use was specifically inappropriate. If you are caught with a device during a testing situation, a quiz situation, it is immediately considered a case of academic dishonesty. We're going to also briefly talk about our artificial intelligence policy. So, artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines or computer systems, enabling them to perform tasks that are typically require human intelligence. It includes things like problem solving, learning from experience, understanding natural language, recognizing patterns, and making decisions based on data. Artificial intelligence, unless you live under a rock, has been something that is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger part of our lives, and probably something, even if you haven't used yet, is something that you have heard of. Things like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and then Apple Intelligence. Those are just three of a plethora of AI tools that are out there. So when can you use it? Okay, well, I'm just going to tell you as the lead instructor, I'm a huge proponent of artificial intelligence and use it almost daily. Okay, you can use AI tools, okay? ChatGPT, Gemini, Apple Intelligence, Copilot, we can go on and on and on, okay? For brainstorming and research, okay? So like getting suggestions for research topics, or having it define complex terms for you, or having it summarize something for you, okay? However, when it comes to your final assignments, you have to do those independently. So you can't just go into ChatGPT and ask it to do this assignment for you, okay? You have to do that. We want to see the citations in it, okay? In fact, most of our assignments require a set number of citations, and we want to see your words. The software that we use also has the ability to detect AI written information. So, just some ethical considerations with generative artificial intelligence. Okay, so generative artificial intelligence, number one, although it can seem that way, it is not sentient. Okay, it's not actually alive. It's not actually a person. They don't possess self-awareness, and they are trained on data sets. Okay, so as a result, they have inherent biases and limitation. Okay, it is biased. So due to the training of past data, they don't always account for current social changes and could have implicit biases. They can mislead. Okay, they sometimes give you information that lacks veracity, or information that's actually just false. Okay, because it's pulling from a data set that's incorrect. So you cannot 100% always trust what it gives you. So you always need to verify whatever information it gives you from other websites, okay, and make sure that you include appropriate citations. So just some examples of unethical uses of AI. So plagiarism, obviously, okay, when you're having the AI create your work and then submit it as your own. False information, when you are submitting false information based on AI without actually researching it, okay? You are responsible for what you submit. Okay, so if the AI is giving you false information and you submit that, it is on you. Over reliance, so relying too heavily on AI tools, leading to a lack of critical thinking and independent learning. Understand that unethical use of AI will follow the same procedures as outlined in the academic dishonesty policy. When you use AI, you need to make sure that you cite it appropriately, and this is just an example of how to cite APA citation style for AI. We're going to have a follow-up lesson here at the beginning of the course on how to use artificial intelligence, and specifically those GAIs, to enhance your learning. They are incredibly beneficial. They are going to be very helpful to you in the paramedic program, so you choose to use them. And we're going to spend more time where I'm going to take you through how to use it ethically, and all of the powerful resources that are literally at your fingertips. So, as the last part of this, we're just going to do some practice here. So, I'm going to display a source text and then the student work, and then you are going to identify if it is plagiarism or if it is not plagiarism. And this is just the